Hello students, welcome to Ekam Academy. Today we are going to discuss about a topic that is in news called theaterization of commands. This topic is important from GS3 perspective, basically from the point of view of reforms in the armed forces. A topic called reforms in the armed forces. Reforms in the armed forces. From this perspective, this topic is important for your mains as well as your prelims examination. Okay, let's see what is the news. See, ever since India became independent, reforms in the armed forces have been a continuous issue of concern to the state. Why? Because it is very important, because army is a very important tool of power projection in the neighborhood also and also in general for a country. So it is very important to regularly update the defense forces and their capacity, the weapons capacity of the country. So in this particular direction, one of the reforms that has been suggested by many luminaries in the past, like if you remember, one very important committee after the Kargil conflict that happened in 1999, after the Kargil conflict of 1999, a committee was set up under the chairmanship of K. Subramaniam. This committee came to be known as Kargil Review Committee. This committee gave very far-sighted recommendations for improvement in the armed forces. And one of the recommendations given by this committee also happens to be the theaterization of command. What does this theaterization of command means? We'll discuss in another 2-3 minutes. Okay. Now, very important, one should understand that what is the meaning of the word theaterization of command? See, generally, we know that there are three important services in the armed forces. One is the army, where this battle tank is depicting the army. If we can see minutely, there are some helicopters in the air and also few ships can be seen. So it means it is basically talking about a theater. Here, theater means a particular geographical area. It is not the theater that you go to watch a movie or something. No. The theater here means in a particular geographical area, how we use all these three armed forces services in a battlefield. It is called theaterization of command. Command basically here is, command is in the armed forces. If you are preparing for serious examination or India examination, you would know that the country has around 17 commands. In this 17 commands, we know, let's say for example, if I have to explain you how the strength in the army is distributed, understand, you would have heard about this word battalion. You would have heard about this word battalion or a regiment. At times regiment word is also used. After the battalion, there comes a brigade. After the brigade, there comes a division. After the division, there comes a corps. After the corps comes the command. Now understand, this hierarchical structure depicts a particular number of the armed forces. Generally, a battalion consists of anywhere between 800 to 1200 fighting soldiers, and a brigade is made up of 3 to 4 battalions. A division is made up of 2 to 3 brigades. A division is made up of 2 to 3, a corps is made up of 2 to 3 divisions. Simultaneously, a command is made up of 2 to 3 corps. Corps headquarters, it is called corps, C-O-R-P-S. So when we are talking about command, when we are talking about theaterization of command, we are basically talking about at the level of a command, we are trying to integrate the three services, army, navy and air force, to operate in a particular area under a unified command structure. Very important. Under a unified command structure. What does it mean? It means generally the army reports to the officers, and the men of the army will report to army people. The naval officers and the naval men will report to the navy people. The air force, the men and the air force pilots and all, they have their own departmental hierarchy. So what happens is, in a general scenario, Air Force, Navy and Army, they report to their line directorates. It is called line directorates, directly without any intervention of other services. But in a unified command structure, one particular officer would be made in charge of all the three services. So what does it mean? It means if an army officer is made in charge of a particular theater, and he is told that all the Air Force and Navy deployed in this area is under your command. It means that the senior most army officer can instruct the Air Force and the Navy also to jointly carry out an operation with them. When this happens, the Navy need not take orders from its naval headquarters, because it has been put under unified command structure of that particular army. Need not necessarily be a theater is headed by an army only. If the theater is more of Air Force combat, even an Air Force officer can lead a theater command. If the theater is more of related to maritime security, a naval officer can be made responsible for that theater command. So what is the purpose here? Basically, to bring the resources of Army, Navy and Air Force under a common unified command structure. So this has been one of the big recommendations of K. Subramaniam committee that was formed after the 1999 Kargil conflict. So in this report, in this particular committee, K. Subramaniam, who was head of the committee, he gave a recommendation that the India time has come that we need to go for theaterization of command, because after 1999 it was felt, because of few dimensions related to the threat emanating, the threat emerging from maritime security, the threat emerging from cyberspace, and also the threat emerging from air, that is Air Force, has also become very, very prominent. So it is high time that our country should have a unified command structure. So this was a recommendation given by the Kargil Review Committee that was headed by K. Subramaniam. What is a theaterization of command? As I explained you, theaterization of the armed forces is the integration of the Army, Air Force and Navy under a single unified command structure for a specific geographical area. So what does it mean? It means, say for example, this is say for our India, we can say, you can say Western Theatre Command, you can say Southern Theatre Command, you can say Central Theatre Command, you can say Eastern Theatre Command, you can say Northeastern Theatre Command, you can say Northern Theatre Command. So what will happen? All the Air Force, Navy and Army, they will come under a unified command structure. Say if the Army feels this is one area where naval domination is important, they may make the naval people overall in charge of this theater. So this way the theaters would be established across the country. So as of now, we have 17 commands, but all these 17 commands are independent Army, Navy and Air Force command. So what they will do, they will try to merge them and maybe form 7 or 8 theater commands in future. So what is the purpose here is to bring in integration and a sense of jointness in the operations. Okay, that's the important reason. What would be the advantages? Single to multi-domain operations. It means you can carry out operations where the requirement of Air Force, Navy and Army is needed as a single point of command and control. Second is fusing space and cyberspace. You can use the cyberspace and the digital space also into the traditional domains because of the integration of all the three forces. Digitization of the battlefield, information and visualization, this can happen because the Air Force would have certain infrastructure that would allow us to operate very deep inside the enemy territory. So that ways you can digitize the battlefield and also get information and see how the battle is progressing. Okay? And lastly, net-centric and data-centric operations can be carried out very beautifully in a theater command structure. Then what is the significance? The creation of such commands will separate the operational functions from the raise, train and sustain and other administrative functions. Generally what the army was used to doing till now is they will raising is basically calling for recruitment, train is basically training them, basic military training is given to them, and then is sustaining them, the training sustenance, the the training sustenance, the cadre sustenance, everything was happening. So what we were doing till now, raise, train and sustain. But what we would be doing, raise, then train in a joint operation scenario and sustain also in a joint operation scenario. So this will bring in fusion into the working of the armed forces. Say for example, I have served in the Indian Army for 11 years, but my exposure to Air Force or Navy was very minimal, very minimal. If I can count in my 11 years of service, hardly I would have spent 20 to 25 days with my sister, what you call services, be it Air Force or be it Navy. So if I have to carry out an operation along with Air Force or Navy, my capacity would be limited because I do not understand the drills and procedures. So over a period of time, what will happen? The moment theaterization of command will happen, an Army officer will work very closely with the Navy officer will work very closely with the Air Force officer. So this will bring in a sense of bonhomie and bonding between all the three services, which is badly missing presently. Okay. Then what is jointness 1.2 and jointness 1.2? See, generally what happened is, very recently, yesterday, I believe yesterday, the Chief of Defence Staff addressing some gathering made a statement that earlier we have achieved jointness 1.0. Now the aim is to achieve jointness 2.0. What is this jointness? The jointness of Army, Navy and Air Force. He says jointness 1.0 was about better bonhomie and consensus among the three services. There was an impetus to move towards next level of jointness 2.0. Impetus means that kick, that element of upbringing. Then the joint culture, though different from service specific culture, needs to respect the uniqueness of each service. Generally, the Army has its own culture, Air Force has its own culture, Navy has its own culture. Like say for example, Army, the regimentation culture is very strong. A Gorkha soldier, he can die for the cause of Gorkha regiment. But this does not happen so in Navy and Air Force, because that sense of regimentation somewhere misses in Air Force and Navy, because they are more of a technical arm. So this is where there is a possibility of a clash coming into play. So the jointness 2.0 tries to address this issue, where the Gorkha soldier can directly integrate with the Navy and the Air Force soldier and carry out a joint operation. It could be learning their etiquettes, it could be learning their drills and practices, it could be the idea of the weaponry that the Navy and Air Force people are using. Every tactics related to military would be taught to all the three services soldiers. That's the idea of jointness 2.0. And do we already have a joint command? Yes, I told you there are 17 commands. In that 17 commands, 2 commands are already tri-services command. We call them tri-services command. Which are these 2 tri-services command that we already have? One is the Andaman and Nicobar command, and the second is the Strategic Forces command. The Strategic Forces command is primarily related to our nuclear, what you call equipment, nuclear weaponry or nuclear equipment, as you may call it. So if the question comes in prelims that do we already have any tri-services command, the answer is yes, Andaman Nicobar command and the what you call the Strategic Forces command. These are the true tri-services command we already have. So this topic is important from your prelims perspective also, and also from GS paper 3 internal security under the topic of modernization of the defense forces. For more such videos, do subscribe to our channel Ekam IAS Academy. And I am also very happy to tell you that Ekam IAS Academy is launching new GS Prelims cum Mains Foundation batch starting from 27th of this month. If you are planning to prepare for your 2025 examination, UPSC Civil Services examination, do call us on the numbers given on the view file and ask for a personal counseling session with me. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.